not bad, eh? Not bad, eh? Not bad at all, he said. Alright, people, folks. I'm trying not to be too loud. It sometimes is a little bit unnerving, because I don't really know how that microphone... If you can all hear me alright, because I cannot connect my good microphone to the computer at the moment because it's broken and I ain't got no money to replace it. But that's just how it is, right? You know. Anyway, I have said I'm going to continue and just see what happens, right? I'm just going to allow life to show me what it can do. And so I have posted a crazy amount of stories on Medium. By now it's more than 200, and some of them are stories and some of them are more like articles. Some of them are like diary entries. Some of them are poems. I also post the lyrics to my songs there, and I've now created playlists where I try to kind of sort them just to give people a chance to stick with a certain genre when they want to read something, but also for me to have an overview and to kind of organize my work, because I like to do that. And now I would like to take the time and just read some of the things that I have written, because I've actually never done that. I mean, I sometimes go through it, but I haven't really read the things that I've written myself. And I know some of them are real nice. And I like that better because this stuff is freely available. I don't really see the point of reading all of my books to you, because that's my potential income, right? So I don't want to be too stupid. You know, I can share everything, but there are certain things which I just have to keep locked, and then people have to unlock it, because the books basically are like these stories, in a way, right? I've got my own style, and these books are in a way like, you know, like some of these stories, but then really big, and they only deal with one topic. So you've got 200 pages that deals with a certain topic, where I walk you through my own madness and potentially your madness. But anyway, so let's just start. You know, I'm just gonna be like this. I feel like I'm a bit closer to the microphone, and then it's a bit louder, and I don't have to speak as loud, because actually, right, 10 o'clock, people want to sleep. I always like to... What? Well, that's interesting. Well, it doesn't matter. Oh yeah, because it's hidden, of course. Alright. I'll start with this one. I'm always very, very conscious of the s sound, because it sounds sometimes really s-ish, right? Okay. Scary places found in the darkness may reveal beautiful things, if you know how to look, that is. Did you ever try to hold your own against an army of spiders? The story I am about to tell you might chill your bones, or fill your pants with the unsettling weight. Wait, you see, I already see all my spelling mistakes, right? Of a giant dump straight from the colon. I think too much, and in such a way flow is hard to reach. Flow state is a state of flow that comes from meditation. Meditation is not what people tell you it is. It has nothing to do with sitting around and doing nothing. Meditation is actively being in the present moment and doing whatever is required from you at the moment you find yourself in. I am writing as a form of meditation, and I go to great length to get there, because my body is specific to my own needs. Everybody has certain requirements that must be met in order to reach a flow state. Some people get to this place by sitting still and focusing on the inside in a certain kind of way. For me, it works through ingesting certain substances. To get to this place right now, where I have done all the things that my body needs to relax enough so I can actively meditate, I have masturbated without ejaculation. Yeah, I'm really honest. I have smoked cannabis or some other substance, and I have drunk a large portion of ceremonial cacao. This mixture is not a guarantee path to liberation, and it works for me as much as it might not work for you. I have figured this out, and as often as not I find myself clinging to ideas of health that have nothing to do with my bodily and spiritual needs. If I don't smoke, I start feeling terrible. I just have to say, this is a completely different mindset than what I have now. Because now I'm actually, when I smoke, I feel terrible. So now I'm rather in the, I don't smoke. And I actually eat less. Drink more tea, right? So this is how much things can change. I like to elaborate on things when I read them. That's why I call them readings of madness. This is really good. It isn't so much about smoking tobacco, because tobacco unsettles me, but about smoking herbs and recently fly agaric, because that is what I happen to have available at the moment. So what to do to figure out what is good for you? You have to try. I don't say try what I have done, but try what you have done or did not do. Figure out by spending time alone and reflecting on the things that worked for you or made you happy. For instance, I remember during my studies in environmental protection, and also during the time I did my master's in wildlife at the University of the Free State, there were certain, let's call them practices, that I highly enjoyed, and others that I did not. The only way that I enjoyed writing was by using LaTeX, a script-based typewriting software. I also highly enjoy working with Linux because it is neat and concise and for free and not owned by any large corporations that steal my data and exploit me. I remember writing my thesis about lynx activity in the Bavarian forest. There I was, analyzing millions of points of observation. Just look at that. I mean, that's from my thesis, and I was using R to generate, or did I do this one in R? Also possible that I think I generated it in R. Or I generated it in LaTeX. But look at this. 960,909 rows of data for links. No, that was not true. That was for roe deer. Summary of GAMS calculated. I don't actually know why I put that in here. Oh yeah, GAMS were like generally something models. I'm so glad I don't have to do this shit anymore. Because now I just let my mind do this kind of stuff, right? Now I just let my mind analyze the data that I collect through observation. I don't have to run any models because I don't have to prove anything to anyone, right? I'll just show that I know certain things, yeah? Certain things. You never know everything. I remember how I was very fond of the programming software R, and that despite my reluctance to work, I always found great pleasure in creating models and graphs with this software. I could go for hours solving those riddles or puzzles as I called them. Here is one of the graphs that I spent quite a bit of time to bring into existence during my bachelor's dissertation in 2014. So just if you look at that, I mean, first you read the figure. Average circadian activity patterns per season and in total for lynx, roe deer, and red deer, neglecting the individual. Mean activity was calculated per hour after the Z transformation and therefore does not represent absolute values. Mean twilight times beginning of dawn and dusk until end of dawn and dusk are indicated by gray bars and show a shift throughout the year. Right, so it says here, my job was to find coinciding patterns of activity between lynx, roe deer, and red deer. Right, that was my job. So you see here, if you want to look at lynx activity, you know, lynx, it's the cat. Lynx is the scientific name. And then roe deer, capreolus. And red deer, cervus elaphus. So roe deer is the main prey of the Eurasian lynx. And that's like a shepherd dog sized cat. I think they weigh roughly like 25 degrees Celsius, 25 kilogram. And now you see here spring, and then you see summer, and you see autumn, winter, and this is done total throughout the year. So I was analyzing data that had been collected for 5 years. So they used GPS collars that were placed around the necks of roe deer, red deer, and lynx. I think it was in total roughly like 9 lynx, and then maybe like 100 and something roe deer, and I think it was maybe 40 red deer, something like that. And now I was averaging these activity patterns. And circadian means daily rhythms, I believe. You know, I don't remember everything that I did here because this stuff didn't really have any meaning anymore after I handed in my thesis until now. And so you can see, so how these GPS collars work is they have 2 axes, so like this axis and this axis, and then depending on how fast the GPS collar moves in a certain direction, right, like this or like this, it generates a value, so it goes by acceleration. And that means if it's a high value, then the lynx or the roe deer or red deer or whatever you put the collar around is more active. So if you then have all these values that were averaged into 5-minute intervals or something, and that I then also averaged again, because I had literally millions of rows of data. And so you look at this is the lynx. So you can see total activity, you know, it's just in general, you know, when are they more active? This gray bar represents dusk and dawn. And so you see, they are more active during dusk. From dusk, I always have to check when, I always go through a movie from dusk till dawn, and then I think about, oh wait, so between dusk and dawn they have to fight vampires. I've actually never really watched the movie, but every time I think about dusk and dawn, I go back to that movie and think about, okay, wait, between dusk and dawn? Ah yeah, so dawn is in the morning. So this is twilight in the dawn. So twilight is generally between, no sun and sunrise, I think. So you have here dawn, and this is dusk. It's like average, right? From dawn beginning till dawn end, dusk beginning till dusk end. Of course, these are all averaged values. So minimum to maximum. And then you can see generally that they are active just a little bit, like their peak of activity in the morning is just around dawn, but a little bit earlier, and then peak of activity, you can see that the peak of their activity is generally during dawn and dusk, and in between it's like a little bit less. And you can also tell that with red deer and roe deer, it's at least a similar pattern. Not as pronounced, but it's a similar pattern. And the theory or the idea behind it was that lynx adjusts their activity to the activity of its prey. Yeah, because it makes sense for the lynx to hunt during dawn and during dusk, because there is a bit more light for him to see, or for her, but still dark enough to hide, right? And the lynx is a stalking. I think there's like stalking predator, and there's like the I sit around and wait till you come and then I jump on your back kind of predator, and that's more like what the lynx is. It doesn't really matter. Anyway, that's what I was doing in my studies. And here I just put it into a different shape. Yeah, with all kind of stuff. I disliked the writing up, as I remember quite vividly, because it seemed very unimportant to me to quote all these sources. I had 5 pages of references. Worst thing ever. Because how science works, right? You just look for the quotes that tell the story that you want to tell, right? So if you want to write a scientific article about coffee being good, then you just look for sources that say that. So you already know what you want to say. You just make the story how you want to write it. And that's why science is just storytelling. You just tell a story by adjusting the factors in a way that you like it. And that's why I really, I left science, because it was such bullshit. It was such bullshit. All they care about is writing articles, because universities are institutions. And so are, for example, many other institutions that say, we do nature conservation. They make money. They get money from the state for publishing scientific articles, or they get money from I don't know who. But anyway, I don't know the whole system. I just know that they make money by publishing articles. And so for them it's just, one article after another. So sometimes these researchers, they don't really care about what they say in there. You hear stories about people that just make up data because nobody cares. You just have to say, oh yeah, it's scientifically proven, and people just say, oh yeah, oh, is it? Oh yeah, it's scientifically proven that this is improving your lifestyle. Oh yeah, whoa, if they say that, that's great. But nobody asks how they have proven it, what the experiment was. And in the end, you can't really look at the raw data, because you can adjust data so that it tells the story that you want to tell. right? And then you just run a model, a scientific model, and you just adjust the model because you know what kind of question you're asking and you know what answer you want. So you just take the model that will give you the answers that you want to have. And you can always explain yourself out of this. Yeah, we're doing this for the species to better conserve them. Yeah, to better conserve species, we should just start saving forests, right? I mean, we should just start saving forests and planting forests because that's where most animals live in, right? But nobody wants that because everybody, they don't want wild animals. They don't want, they're happy with chihuahuas, right? Like that's the most they can handle, a chihuahua. But if we would have wolves running around here, right, people would never leave the house anymore. They would just shit their pants. Imagine you would drive around here and a wolf would walk on the streets. People would go nuts. How can this be? This animal should be in the zoo, right? What I really liked about countries like Africa and how is that called? Africa and Norway was that sometimes there was just cattle running around. I really liked that. Because then, as a driver, you also have to be a bit considerate. But in countries like Germany, even when you cycle on the road, people just hate you because they feel like you're slowing me down. Everybody's like in that gigantic ego trip. And that's what science is. People care only about their impact factors. They just want to be famous as scientists. They don't really care about the species because what they're doing doesn't really help the species. I don't have to know what a species eats to realize that we're fucking the planet. I don't have to know what the species eats or how far they travel to realize, that all wildlife is declining, right? I mean, the only things that survive are the things that we hate even more, right? Like the animals that we really hate are the ones that we cannot get rid of, such as cockroaches, such as pigeons, right? Even foxes, rats. I mean, these are all animals that are incredibly proficient at surviving in this toxic environment that we've created. And we hate them for that, right? If an animal manages to outsmart us, we just hate them. And then we want to really kill them, yeah? Until they're protected. And why are they protected, right? You have somewhere a bee's or a wasp's nest and people just take hairspray and a lighter, set it to flames. That's what people do. They don't give a crap. They are invading my space, right? I want to sit here and eat. Well, why? Why can't you just eat inside? Oh, because it's a sunny day and I want to sit on my terrace eating food. Well, just kill a whole colony of bees for that. Or wasps. I mean, wasps are incredibly important animals for the environment. And they're mainly fruit eaters. I mean, they eat a lot of fruits, but we don't have fruits. So why do you think they want to have your meat, right? They only eat that if nothing else is available. I think so, right? I mean, that's what I've read in a paper or somewhere. Okay. Stick with the story, right? I'm reading stuff I said, but I also like talking, right? Because this gives me different ideas than if I just have to stand there and talk. I mean, I don't have to do it. I like that. And just later, I realized during my time in South Africa, observing and analyzing vervet monkey behavior, that I was able to figure out behavioral patterns without running overly complicated models. My mind did this all by itself, simply by sitting and observing and letting it happen. Other people had trouble to trust themselves enough to draw conclusions, and when I tried to tell people what I had found, they required me to provide them with complicated statistical analysis that was utterly useless to me. But since I was in the state of being a student, I had no choice but to do this. In later years, when I wrote the Book of Fear, I realized that I did the exact same thing, only without any analysis on the computer. I had received a vision, which led me to write the book. I had asked openly what I was supposed to do, and I received an answer. Write a book about fear, it said. And I said, okay. That's how it happened. I did not think my way to this. I asked a question and the answer came to me. There was no thinking process involved where I tried to think my way to a solution of how I could solve my problem. It happened like this and I accepted the answer. I spent one entire year gathering experiences that brought me to the very edge of myself, challenging myself and my beliefs by going alone at night into the forest and ingesting high dosages of psychedelic truffles, doing 300 micrograms of LSD alone at night in the vicinity of a lake. Friends were present, but I went alone while they were fully aware of me having taken such a high dosage. I went for a hike without light, and I experienced things that would make you scream yourself into a fit of rage if you would just try it like this. Of course, I did not just do it. I had spent several years experimenting with cannabis already, using it while slacklining, running, and being outside, instead of wasting away in front of the TV like most people. I was far from being a couch potato. While I was in South Africa, I went alone for walks, smoking cannabis and taking pictures. Those stories can be found in my other content as well. The point is that I challenged myself in all kinds of ways, socially, emotionally, and physically. I slacklined during cold and hot weather, in sunshine and rain, during the day and at night. I slackline after doing rapé. I slacklined after smoking tobacco, and I slacklined after smoking cannabis. I went running barefoot in all kinds of weather for 10 kilometers straight. I hiked barefoot for several days in the snow and in the heat. I fasted for 6 days. I went 4 days without food and water, and I learned that after 4 days of not drinking or eating, I still had enough water in me to piss on the 4th day a sufficient amount. It showed me that I don't have to worry so much. Being alone is one more experience that allows me to spend days on end without talking, because I know now that it is more liberating than terrible to be alone. You see? I see because I started looking at everything that felt terrible. I endured it. I went into the darkness and I came out stronger. I pushed through. When I feel like I cannot continue, I ask myself what I need to move on. Right now, I knew I had to drink another ceremonial cacao and roll some doobies. I smoke and suddenly I can write again. I am resolute. I am determined to get to the place where I want to be and need to be creative. Be that doing crochet, writing a book, or recording music, videos, or whatever else I must do. My intuition is my compass, and I have trained it. This video is something you can use to challenge your fear if you like. Watch it with headphones and keep looking at the shapes. Write down what comes up or reflect on how you feel. By sitting with the things that scare you, you can learn to speak the language of emotion. That's true. That's all I can say to that, right? Okay, this is a bit shorter one. It says 2-minute read. It's actually more like a 55-second read. Well, not at my speed. And my tendency to be distracted, right? It's so strange. Just doing this kind of random stuff, right? I mean, that's what my life has been for almost 3 years now. I just do all this seemingly random stuff, and it really, nobody gives a fuck. It's so weird. It's so weird. And every day you wake up and you realize, alright, still nobody gives a fuck. And then I stand here and I read this stuff. It just makes no sense if you think about it. But that's how, trust works. You have a feeling and you follow it. It's either that or giving up. And I'm really bad at giving up. I really tried many times already. But when my heart wants something, I just have to keep going. Sometimes I hated it, but by now I actually think, yeah, I'm glad I just kept going. And now we come to something that actually only now is beginning to take shape. Everyday routine. Let's see, because I wrote this November 29th. I was in a pretty bad place then. Now I'm much better. Let's see what I came up with. Because sometimes I write down these things, and sometimes these things are visions, so that I have something to work towards. It's like writing a 5-year plan, only I put it in a story. Okay. He woke up, breathing hard, beating hard. The night was still thick and heavy with the unknown, and the ventilator was still running like there was nothing else to do, which was supposedly true, as long as the energy supply was ensured, going in circles forever moored to the ceiling until old age or exhaustion would bring him to a stage of final exhaustion, no longer required to go round and round and round the bend. Eternity has a funny feel to it, he thought, not knowing where to begin. The dream that had unsettled him was still lingering somewhere in the darkness, only where? He tried ignoring it, but it seemed so real just a second ago. They always do, and so did he. Every night he went to bed, he had the strong feeling he was committing suicide. For every day he woke up again, and he felt a bit different, somewhat lost. The first minutes of the day were always the worst, 'cause he had no idea what to do or where to go. He couldn't get it. How did other people do it, he wondered. Was it normal like this? Waking up as though you got drunk without getting drunk? Drunk on life, maybe. So he did what he always does. Getting up and somehow managing to pass the kitchen to stagger into the bathroom and wash his face. That has changed since then. Now I wake up and I know exactly what to do, which is get up and start doing something. Right now I write and I do all kinds of things. I just have to check if you can actually hear this properly. Right, so things have changed, that's all I can say to that. And now we come to another story called a tad bit different. It was essential that he did not know what was going on. He knew that much. Yeah, I know that much. Every time he got to this point where he thought he knew what to do, he realized that he had no idea whatsoever. Most people knew what they wanted, or maybe even why they wanted it. With him, it was always like this mad. What? Like this mad, oh yeah, like this mad back and forth. With him, it was always like this mad back and forth. And then for a while, the settling on the middle, only to be pushed and shoved to go back to a swinging reality, grazing knowing and not knowing, but never quite staying on any of them long enough to truly know or not know. Is that normal, he thought once more after having thought this so many times already? He settled for a moment on his conclusion. Right, I'm thinking, why am I doing this to myself? Because if I can bring this closer, then why don't I do it, right? Is that... This is really interesting. Is that normal, he thought once more after having thought this so many times already? He settled for a moment on his conclusion, which usually resulted in a wide grin and the phrase, "fuck you," springing into existence somewhere within his mind, which he located in the general region of his head or third eye or higher wisdom and shit. But who really knows what the fuck is going on, ever and always, anyway? Let us not linger on such things. It is tedious work to find yourself, 'cause every time you think you manage, something happens and kaboom! You are being blasted out into space again, with no footing and just a straw to cling on like a Klingonian battleship that has no idea where to go, which is as liberating as it is fucking your mind with a rubber duck tied to the end of a volcano. It tries to be soft and rubbery, but in the end it is scalding hot lava attached to it and no escaping that. Believe me. There is no just good, for there is always its counterpart waiting somewhere in the shadows to show its teeth. Good eventually gives you bad, just like a hangover that is just the opposite of an alcoholic intoxicant that certainly felt good until it did not. Is that life? Something that feels good until it doesn't? So what if life started out by feeling shit? Then surely there must be a way to unveil its counterpart as well, however unstable that might prove to be. And even if managing to feel good once through hard work or whatever, maybe smoking, you may always get back to feeling shit until you figured out what makes your life a feast and what a catastrophe of suppressed emotions waiting for you to feel and acknowledge them. Until then, happy Thanksgiving, for you probably have a need to be grateful for once in a while to acknowledge that whatever has been happening to and with you is after all your life, and you could be either dead and gone or alive and kicking. A child struggles until it knows how to walk, then it gets lazy, what some of us consider to be adulthood. I think I'd like my life to be a tad bit different. I like this, to be honest. Are you kidding? Sometimes you just have to change something. Oh, wow. Right? Yeah, I can definitely work like that. Yo. I really was trying to figure out how to change that. This is, now I speak into the microphone and the screen is, just look at this. I just used my cajon, put the screen on. You just have to be creative, I'm telling you. You just look at what you have and then you're trying to do something with it. Because if you're spending as much time on the laptop as I do, then you need something. Otherwise, it won't work. I mean, you just have to do something. Oh. Because my neck is really, really painful. But if I stand like this, I kind of have to get used to standing like this. So I'm just going to move that a little bit back. Right. And I can put this like there. Okay. Problem solved. Problem solved. All right. Sometimes it's this. Reset zoom level. F10? No, F11. Yeah. Sometimes it's good to know some of the shortcuts. Also shortcuts in life. That's for sure. Alright, let's check. Hey. Also good to do one at a time. I think I'm gonna do 2 more of this. Maybe you just want to read them all. Choice by action. But I really don't know. Okay, I'm gonna put 4 in there. The effort of living. I know that some of them I really enjoyed. Writing, that is. Also reading, because I always use these things. I read them at least once. Alright. This one is called Care to Prepare. Come on, man. Wait. Come on, man. What's that supposed to mean? I asked him incredulously, making room for my trouble to understand what he just said to me. What do you mean? I said it loud and clear and you don't get me, he answered with more than just a bit of annoyance in his voice. What had just happened? I wondered in my own mind. He said something, I said something, he said something, and suddenly we hate each other. Is that how life is? A bunch of questions and then hatred out of nowhere? Or was that hatred always there? And we just pretended to like each other because we were too afraid to be alone. Did we cling to our pretentious ways simply because it would be easier to be liked by people you hate than to just accept yourself as you are and let go of everyone that pretends to know you without ever truly getting to know themselves? I opened the door of the car and made my way through the traffic jam back to my apartment. Anything was better than pretending to like being with someone although you feel uncomfortable. This is good, I thought to myself, while in the distance I could hear him calling behind me. He was angry, it seemed. I couldn't care less. Sometimes I'm not sure about who I'm actually writing this. Because sometimes, I can see myself in these situations. But then suddenly I'm the other person. I realize you're kind of always both, right? You're never just one of them. You're always part of the problem. If there is a problem, you're always partly responsible for it being there. Because if you would have realized what the problem was, right, you could have offered a solution. And sometimes the solution is never speaking again. Alright, this one is called, Is She Flirting With Me? It was sitting in my throat, that big lump. I wish I could have been honest at the time, and a part of me was. I just said nothing. Stories like this usually end with some happy bullshit. Only I can't really relate to this anymore. As much as it makes me happy, I have to admit that I have never experienced it. Not much reference to go with, talking about points in my life I could hold on to while trying to lead a different life. Such bullshit. Would you like another coffee, sir? I jumped, literally. I also hit my balls in some mysterious way that hurt like crap. Wow, shit, I said. The waitress looked at me with her big orange eyes that might tell a tale from the life of a hero if only I had the balls to figure out what she wants and then somehow sell it to her, almost like I actually have it. Well, eventually she would figure out I was a scam and she fell for what I tried to give her instead of what I had. Desperation right there. Anything at all? She placed her follow-up question. Within my head, I went through all kinds of scenarios until I finally came to a conclusion. The only thing I wanted was based on the idea that she was more interested in me than just selling me stuff, because that's what her job actually encompassed. I realized it in that moment and went from almost starting to flirt with her to, I'll have one more of these with the pumpkin spice and the oat milk, please. Sure, coming right up. Red, you know this. You are somewhere and, there's a woman or there's a guy, right? And the woman's nice to you or the guy is nice to you and you think, oh, maybe they're flirting with me. But it's just their job. Or maybe they're just nice. But sometimes we're so desperate to look for love that anything is better than nothing. Sometimes we just have this fantasy of somebody and we really want to love that person. And we don't even realize that we actually wouldn't even like being with them. That's like people that fancy celebrities, right? You can say like, oh yeah, this actress, oh, she's so beautiful. But you never have to live with them. So in a way, it's like very safe, right, to obsess about them because they're also a distraction from yourself. Because sometimes for some people it's easier to love a fantasy than to deal with your own shit. Yeah. You know, I don't really get that. Right? I'm not really a person that would ask other people for an autograph. Because to me, right, I mean, everybody sits on the toilet and takes shits. So everybody's the same. So what does the autograph of somebody mean to me? Literally nothing. You know, I could write myself an autograph and say, hey, you know, happy birthday. But what's the point of that? Yeah, I rather do this kind of stuff. Okay, I decided. Okay, this one is called Choice by Action. Ah. Yeah, these images are all mine, by the way. You know, I really enjoyed making them. Sometimes I see faces in there. Like here, I see a face. But I assume that it could mean something else for whoever looks at it. I mean, these are a bit harder. You can probably discover things. But generally, I would say you certainly have to spend a bit of time looking at it. And then you have to understand how it makes you feel. You know, when I look at it, I just see faces. I don't really know what I felt when I made it. But yeah, I did feel a lot of anger. So that was one way of transforming my anger into something less angry, but actually quite beautiful. And so when you think like you're really angry, but you can create stuff like this, I mean, it has to come from somewhere. So there's at least something beautiful inside of me, right? If you can make something like this. And, you know, I don't know if I'm like a super gifted person or something, but I just seem to have the ability to translate emotions into all kinds of mediums. You know, I can put emotions into drawing, I can put emotions into words, I can put emotions into whatever lyrics or music. You know, I'm still working on that. I'm also working on putting emotions into movement, but I find that incredibly hard because you have to find a place where you access the emotion and then channel it into something else, right? You know, I can do that with doing these images and writing, but with movement, right, it's like very hard because I'm so stiff, so the energy doesn't flow properly, right? It just like flows into my hands, and that's okay. Because if I do this, I don't actually have to move a lot. I just have to be able to keep standing. Alright. Come on, seriously? I said into the emptiness of the car, overpowering the tunes of my radio, twiddling the silence into sound and making me feel like I'm having a good time. My tire is flat, I said into the phone. Your what? The voice answered. My fucking tire just gave up on me, I answered angrily. Silence. Hello? Nothing. Hello? Nothing. I looked at my phone and realized that the battery had died. I must have forgotten to charge it for some time. Fuck! I screamed. Why does this shit always happen to me? I am literally in the middle of nowhere. I had driven for hours waiting for something to come up. A place to sleep or an ingenious idea how to deal with this messed up situation, and now this? I went back into the car. The best thing I could do now was remain calm. I had parked the car at the side of the road, and night had just started to come in, which would mean I would have plenty of time to think this through. Great. Sitting there, I was thinking of how to proceed. Almost no food left, but at least plenty of water. I also brought toilet paper, which was apparently very thoughtful of me. I started rummaging around looking for something. when my hands finally grasped something I had almost forgotten. Mushrooms. Holy crap. This night was taking a turn for the better. I had totally forgotten about these. Sweet. Nothing better to get your mind off your own personal dilemma than some psychedelics. A voice in my head said something about responsibility and trying to escape. I looked at myself in the rearview mirror real deep. I took a real deep look into those eyes of mine. I tried to look convincing. Then I said, what the fuck? This, yeah, it never has happened to me, which doesn't mean it couldn't. Like this, at least. Yeah, reminds me a bit of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Only a bit more gentle and more wholesome. It's just about seeing opportunities, right? It's just about seeing opportunities. And to make the most of the situation you find yourself in. All right. Let's see. The effort of living. The moon had just come out, and Bill was sitting in darkness. Well, maybe not complete darkness, as the moon had just come out, and it was a full moon at that. Beautiful, real nice. Real nice to say the least, and I've said it. I am still saying it because I am good at clinging to what I've said, making it hard to let go of it and making me rehearse situations where I said stuff over and over again and feeling real proud and cheeky about them, or incredibly bad. A match was being lit by Bill, who was sitting at a skillfully prepared fire. His laziness to make fire like a caveman had resulted in a piece of fire starter lying somewhere in the middle of the heap. Bill was not an idiot. He just knew how he liked things. If you want to have a fire, why should you pretend like matches and lighters and petroleum don't exist? Sure, the skill to build a fire with nothing but hands and stuff you find is nice. But despite his fantasies to live somewhere with some kind of tribal people had no intention of becoming a reality. So he might as well make it easy for himself. The fire was nice and warm, and it was throwing shadows everywhere. Almost like a paintball gun firing randomly at the world and creating never-ending shape-shifting scenery, life, creation, heat. That as well. Trying to outdo myself as the narrator. Hope you don't mind. I'm just trying a few things. Bill fell asleep that night. The next morning he woke up, I guess. I left the scene because it was starting to bore me and started telling another story instead. One of a real man who went to live in a cave for 3 decades, and when he realized that he actually wanted family and a young and beautiful wife, he was old and skinny and nobody wanted to sleep with him anymore. So sad. Come on. I like this kind of stuff. Because I see it, I really see life like this. Yeah, I'm not going to read every story because some of them not gonna read every story that is in that playlist. I just don't feel like it, because I have read them already, and some of these stories are actually from a book, The Dignity of the Unvaccinated. And so Up for a Joke is from that book. And I really don't feel like reading them. They're too long. Plus I've read them already. And at one point it just gets boring. I mean, you cannot reread your own stuff too many times, because it keeps you from growing. So I'm doing this once now, and I've done it, and then I can do something else, right? That's the point of it. That's the point of doing things, so that you do something, and then you can do something else, right? So I write books, and when I've written them, I can read them, or I can write another one, right? You just keep going, because you actually like it then. I like this story. Koolumbus. You said my name, Koolumbus said, and he was grateful he had a truck full of grates. They were piling up and down, and while he had a truck full of grates, he was wondering if anybody knew who the guy with the truck full of grates was. He had been wondering for a while, since he was trying to be acknowledged for his deeds. Some people considered him small, and what he really wanted was to be seen, which is why he thought real hard about what people would like about him better than himself. An idea struck him, and it was easy and simple. Get a truck and fill it up with grates. You will really stand out like that. His thoughts were interrupted by a question. Sorry, what did you just say to me? I thanked you for saying my name, Koolumbus said, and managed a faint smile because the exhilaration he felt upon hearing his name had worn off faster than the adrenaline rush of a base jump. What, your name? I don't even know you, dude. I was talking to somebody else about Columbus. You know, the guy who tried to compensate for his mediocrity complex by finding some place and then it elsewhere? Complete failure, that guy. Anyway, must be going, but it was nice chatting with you anyway. Koolumbus was standing there all alone. He thought that this guy's remarks had hurt his feelings, but the truth was that he had been kidding himself. He wanted to try real hard for other people to like him, and he never tried hard to like himself. What a douche, he mumbled to himself. Went home and took a shower. You know, that's the kind of thing when you say, what a douche. You know, you're actually saying that to yourself. Because what a douche that Koolumbus is. Right? So if you call somebody a douche, then you're a douche yourself. Suck on that. I like that one. The animals were standing around in a circular cube of triangular fashion. Sometimes I really don't know where that stuff comes from. They were all squares. One said to the rest of them, "Let us walk this path with dignity." As he spoke, a little gulp of fire escaped his lungs and set the house on fire. The animals were standing outside now, and as they were all squares, they started to get incredibly angry at what had just happened. Instead of wondering about the possibilities this new and predictable and this unpredictable situation had posed on them, Instead of wondering about the possibilities this new and unpredictable situation had posed on them, they turned on each other. They blamed the dragon for breathing fire, and the dragon blamed them for chiding him for the very essence of his nature. I breathe fire, just like most of you take big shits in the evening and in the morning. How would you like me to be? I breathe fire, and you either accept it or drop dead. If you push me further and further, I will eventually have to devour you all, for that is also within my nature. I have tried to be a friendly dragon and live amongst sheep, but I can no longer pretend. If I spend time with you, I will eat you alive, and therefore I must leave you. I burned your house because your lives were miserable, and I believe that a little hardship will do you good. Now I will leave you to burn other houses and to go where my feet or my wings or my nature takes me. I will pretend to be a sheep no more, but breathe fire openly. He turned around one last time, and then he said, with a mad grin on his lips, "Suck on that, you fuckers." Right, it's like, that's how life is. You try to change things. You know, people are complaining all the time about the weather. You know, they're complaining about expensive food. They're complaining about everything, about neighbors, about whatever. And sometimes people really need to suffer. So I get that, right? I mean, I'm that dragon in a sense. And it's interesting in that image that the dragon comes out of the other animals, right? So it's basically a manifestation of their own anger. So what really burnt down their house is their own anger and their own failure to appreciate life. The dragon just gives them something to work with so that they start being so miserable and humble themselves a little. I mean, that's roughly what it's about. Alright, that was that. Okay, now another one. Death is but a question away. Ask them, a thin voice muttered from the mist of the mistless forest night. It's impossible to speak with them, said another, even thinner voice. How would you know if you ever tried asking them? Answered the first voice. The utterer of the thinner of the two voices leaned close to the closest of the mushrooms that was glowing in the dark. He said, Sorry, I was wondering if I can eat you. Oh wait, the utterer, he sees him. Sorry, I was wondering if I can eat you and get incredibly high from that. The mushroom coughed, for it had rarely spoken since the dawn of its existence, which was just this very morning. Which is all mornings, but never mind that, it said. It depends. So far, no one has tried. You may be the first to tell the tale. Who am I to advise you to do anything? The questionnaire thought of that for a second and then looked at the other pair of eyes opposite of him. Then he looked back at the mushrooms. He shrugged. He plugged it and placed it into his mouth. He died that night, but life was more sweet than ever. You know, that's an interesting thing about psychedelics and fear of death, because anybody who ever had a psychedelics experience will also realize that a part of you sometimes kind of dies. So I can say that there are parts in me that kind of died. I mean, they're just gone. I mean, that kid that I used to be simply doesn't exist anymore. Not in the way that it used to. And it's really strange because you really have to get to know yourself again. And when you then listen to people like Ramdas and they say, dying into life, I really have the feeling I have died already a couple of times. And that, of course, changes the whole perspective that you have on death. So if you've already faced death a couple of times, because every time you challenge your fear, it's basically like dying. And every time you challenge that, you face that, something dies and something else is being born. Okay, I'm just gonna do 2 more. Yeah, I know. Whatever. Gorilled into a tunnel. It was moonlight that illuminated my naked form. I was running through the darkness, semi-darkness, illuminated by the gentle and silvery touch of the full moon. The moon was filling puddles of darkness with silver and gave the impression of the existence of unicorns' droppings laying out and about. Who is to say otherwise? A voice spoke loud and clear in my head and made me produce some droppings on my own account. They were neither silver nor unicorn-like. They were brown, a little sticky, and they certainly smelled like shit. How about that? The voice said inside my head. Maybe you are a bit like the others, despite you running around naked in the forest. It chuckled somewhere behind my ear and then moved somewhere else to bother someone else. Maybe you? How about that? Have you dreamed of doing anything ever? Have I caught you at slacking off? Have I found you wishing you were me or somebody else? What a fool you are. Get a grip on yourself and get the fuck out of the house. I don't give a shit whether you run naked into the night or go for a hike or a walk. Why do you sit around at home all day? What the fuck is your problem? When you go into the darkness of yourself, bring a lantern, a candle. Remind yourself of the light. This is my radiator, right? This pattern. It's my radiator. This is my middle finger. I'm actually really bad at drawing hands, so do you know how I do it? I just place my hand like this over a sheet of paper, and then I just draw around it. And then I just add detail. Super easy. It looks like I'm really good at drawing hands. I'm actually not. Oh yeah, nice. This one is really short. Funny things come from the depth of your soul. I never knew I wanted that, I thought to myself. I had to quiet down so much, only to realize that I wanted that. I had spent hours of deep reflection, looking into the darkness and feeling all those emotions, only to learn that I wanted that. I would do it all again. Alright, I think that was it. In any case, right, if you did not feel comfortable listening to me reading this, then read it yourself, right? Cheers.